Dr. Sarah Chun had seen many things during her 15 years working at the Intergalactic Wildlife Preservation Center on Station Kepler 442b, but nothing had prepared her for what lay before her in the containment chamber. The creature was barely the size of a house cat, its pristine white scales dulled by sickness and neglect. What should have been a majestic young dragon was instead a pitiful sight that made her heart ache. "Nobody wants it," said Commander Thek, the Zephyrian Station administrator, his 4 arms crossed in obvious disgust. "The parent species abandoned it on our doorstep 3 cycles ago. Look at it, human. It's riddled with void parasites. Even touching it could kill most species." Sarah pressed closer to the reinforced glass, watching as the tiny dragon struggled to lift its head. Its eyes, which should have been bright silver like fresh mercury, were clouded with pain and infection. Dark, writhing shapes moved beneath its translucent skin, the dreaded void parasites that fed on life force itself. "What's the normal protocol?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Commander Thek's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a sigh among his people. "Incineration. Clean, efficient, prevents the spread of the parasites. The creature is beyond saving anyway. Has anyone actually tried to help it?" The Zephyrian's compound eyes focused on her with something resembling surprise. "Help it? Dr. Chun, void parasites are universally fatal. They consume their host from the inside out while simultaneously making them toxic to touch. No known species has ever survived a full infestation. This hatchling has dozens of them." Sarah studied the small dragon more carefully. Its breathing was labored but steady. Despite the obvious pain, there was something in its clouded eyes that spoke of intelligence and awareness. Most importantly, it was still fighting. "I want to try," she said firmly. "Absolutely not," Commander Thek replied immediately. "Dr. Chun, I respect your work with the rescued stellar bears and the nebula foxes, but this is different. The parasites could spread to the entire station population. My responsibility is to the thousands of beings who live and work here. Then, let me take it to the quarantine lab on sublevel 7. Full isolation protocols. If I can't help it within 1 standard cycle, then we'll discuss other options." Commander Thek was quiet for several minutes, his 4 arms now tapping against his carapace in a rhythm that indicated deep thought. Finally, he spoke. "Why, Dr. Chun? Why risk yourself for a creature that even its own kind has abandoned?" Sarah placed her hand against the cool glass of the containment chamber. The little dragon had somehow sensed her presence and was attempting to crawl closer, leaving a trail of luminescent fluid that indicated the parasites were literally eating it alive from within. "Because sometimes the ones nobody else will touch are exactly the ones who need us most," she said softly. "And because humans have a saying, not on my watch." 3 hours later, Sarah was suited up in the most advanced biocontainment gear the station possessed. The quarantine lab on sublevel 7 hadn't been used in over a decade, but the automated systems had quickly brought it online. Every surface was sterilized, every air molecule filtered and refiltered. The transport had been the easy part. The tiny dragon was so weak that it barely stirred when the containment field lifted it from its original chamber to the new, much more sophisticated medical bay. Now came the hard part, actually examining a creature that could kill her with a single touch. "Vital signs are weak but stable," announced the lab's AI in its calm, professional tone. "Parasite count, 47 individual organisms. Host species, stellar dragon, subspecies unknown. Age, approximately 30 standard days. Prognosis, terminal." "Thank you for that cheerful assessment," Sarah muttered as she approached the examination table. Through the thick gloves of her biosuit, she could barely feel the dragon's tiny heartbeat, but it was there, irregular and thready but persistent. The void parasites were worse than she had imagined. They weren't just feeding on the dragon's life force. They were actively converting its cellular structure into more parasites. What she was looking at wasn't just an infection. It was a transformation. In a few more days, there would be nothing left of the original creature except an empty shell filled with deadly organisms. Computer, access all files on void parasite biology and treatment. Accessing. Warning. No successful treatment protocols exist for advanced infestations. Survival rate for any level of infestation. 0% across all documented species. Sarah began her examination anyway, using every scanning device available to build a complete picture of what was happening inside the small dragon. What she found was fascinating and horrifying in equal measure. The parasites weren't just random invaders. They were working in concert, following some kind of organized plan to systematically replace the dragon's organs with their own twisted versions. But there was something odd about the pattern, something that didn't quite fit with the previous case studies she'd reviewed. Computer, show me the parasite distribution pattern overlaid with the dragon's nervous system. The holographic display that materialized above the examination table made her gasp. The parasites had completely avoided the dragon's brain and spinal cord. In every other recorded case, the nervous system was among the first targets. But here, they seem to be deliberately leaving it intact. Computer, could the parasites be keeping the host conscious intentionally? Unknown. This deviation from established patterns is not documented in any existing files. Sarah spent the next 6 hours taking detailed scans and samples, working with the painstaking precision that had made her one of the galaxy's leading xenobiologists. By the time she finished, the little dragon had fallen into what appeared to be a deep, exhausted sleep. The preliminary analysis of the samples would take several more hours, but Sarah already had a theory forming. It was crazy, unprecedented, and probably impossible, but it was something. She was halfway back to her quarters when her communicator chirped with an emergency message. The text was brief, but chilling. 3 more infected dragons discovered on mining station Zirian 7. All young, all abandoned, requesting immediate disposal protocols. Sarah stopped in the middle of the corridor, her mind racing. 4 infected dragon hatchlings in the span of a few days, all abandoned by their parents, all in different sectors of the galaxy. That wasn't coincidence. She changed direction, heading instead for the station's central communications array. Whatever was happening here was bigger than one sick dragon, and she had a feeling that humanity's stubborn refusal to accept the impossible was about to become very important. The communications center was nearly empty at this hour, staffed only by a skeleton crew of night shift operators. Sarah badged her way into one of the secure research channels and began sending out inquiries to every xenobiology contact she had across the known galaxy. The responses that came back over the next few hours painted a disturbing picture. In the last standard month, over 24 young dragons have been found infected with void parasites and subsequently abandoned by their parents. The cases were scattered across hundreds of light years, affecting multiple dragon subspecies that rarely interacted with each other. But what really caught Sarah's attention were the details that most researchers had dismissed as irrelevant. In every case, the infected dragons were the smallest of their clutch. In every case, they had been developing normally until the sudden appearance of the parasites. And in every case, the parent dragons had abandoned them immediately upon discovering the infection, which was unusual behavior for a species known for its fierce protection of young. Sarah was still pondering these connections when her lab computer chimed with the completed analysis of her samples. What she saw in the data made her forget everything else. The void parasites in her dragon weren't just any void parasites. They were a completely new subspecies with genetic markers that suggested artificial modification. Someone, or something, had deliberately engineered these organisms. More importantly, the modified parasites were producing a compound that Sarah's database couldn't identify. But the molecular